Order this regular meeting of the Santa Barbara School Board for January 14th, 2014. And we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Cash.
Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muy buenas noches. Si hay alguien del público que necesite servicios de intérprete en español, estamos aquí a la orden por esas dos puertas que están aquí en la próxima sala. Gracias.
Thank you. We do have headsets available for the hearing impaired. Just notify one of our staff members on the side here if you need that. Moving on to introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions. Dr. Cash.
Members of the board, very proud to have a very special performance this evening in recognition. The Santa Barbara Junior High School has a tremendous music program, and it's had one for years under the direction of Karen Dutton. And this year, Karen's, I know, very fortunate to have a super talented 7th grade musician, Henry Urschel, who has chosen to participate in the California All-State Junior High School Jazz Band. There were only 2 alto sax players in the band, and he is one of the 2 that was picked. I've been told by music teachers in our district that this is the first time in anyone's recollection that any student from Santa Barbara Unified School District has been selected to be in the All-State Band. It is an extraordinary accomplishment, and to be playing an instrument of which there were only 2 selected of that instrument speaks even more about Henry's ability, his talent, and his interest. And so he's going to be performing on February 21st in Fresno, and he'll be representing himself, his family, Santa Barbara Junior High School, and our district. And Henry, thank you and congratulations, and he's going to play a couple of songs for us. So we're ready. So why don't you come on up and tell us what you're going to play?
I'm going to play 2 songs. One of them is called Blue Bossa, and the other one's called Straight No Chaser. Blue Bossa is a bossa nova. It's like a Latin piece. And Straight No Chaser is just traditional jazz. And I'm going to be playing Straight No Chaser for
Well, you can get used to those standing ovations, Henry. Congratulations, and I'm sure all of your music teachers and your family are incredibly proud of you. So thank you so much for that. That was wonderful for us to hear, and great for Santa Barbara Junior High and for Santa Barbara Unified. So thank you. And Mr. Heron?
Henry, it brings tears to my eyes because I sit here dreaming that was me. I played the saxophone alto in La Cumbra and at Santa Barbara High School, and I always dreamed I could play like that. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. But that was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Henry, and congratulations. Who did you bring with you tonight?
I brought my mom and my music teacher, Mrs. Dutton, and Mr. Garcia.
Good choice. Congratulations, and thank you all very much. Good luck. Have fun in February.
Thanks.
Thank you for your support.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful to be at the junior high where there's an emphasis placed on doing something like this.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're also very fortunate. We'll continue with our student theme. We have Jose Espinoza from San Marcos High School who's going to come forward and present the student report. I was in class today with Jose.
Yes, you were indeed. First period.
That's right.
U.S. history. When someone perform jazz also.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's pretty awesome. Young talent, yeah. Well, I'm starting off with Dos Pueblos ASP report this evening. Over the holiday season, several drives yielded plenty of donation to local nonprofits such as Union Shop and the Red Cross. blood drive. About 100 students donated blood. Over 12 gallons of blood be used to save. Sorry, I just obtained this report and I haven't read it, so I'm completely fine.
That must have been
wrong
shocking for
grammar.
a moment.
Yeah. Well, 12 gallons of blood were used, are going to be used to help people in critical conditions. Community and friends, over 5 drums of toys and warm clothes were donated to Union Shop to help underprivileged families throughout the Santa Barbara County. Penny Drive, over the course of about 2 weeks, all 4th period classes raised almost $4,000. Canned food drive, about 300 cans of non-perishable food was donated to the Union Shop. Warm clothes drive. Our annual holiday package was a hit, running from December 16th to the 20th. And yes, that's about for DP. And now I'm moving to San Marcos High School. Competition in American society during high school is one of the things. Okay, in American society during high school, we're so focused on competing against one another. We're focused on who's going to be the valedictorian, who's going to have the most community service hours, who's going to be the captain of the sports team. We're not focused on working as a team for the same purpose, for the common good. And Kids Help Be Kids provides that type of experience in high school. We are able to work together for the same purpose. And the purpose is to help other kids around the world that sadly don't have the same opportunities we have here in America. And it's an honor to say that we're able to raise about $300,000 in 16 weeks to help foundations around the world. You guys should go next year. It's an awesome concert. It's at the Granada. You should go. I recommend it 100%. Sorry, got a little emotional there. Third quarter is our academic focus block, where we start school all over again. Seasonal schedules allow us to obtain a college-like experience during high school, which allows us to improvise better. Sorry. Union Shop, we were able to raise $10,229, contribute to our local community, and that's really important to us. And I want to give some shout outs to Oclina, Roosevelt, Monroe County, Monte Vista, and Viejo Valley for their support. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to come up with the amount of money we came up with. Thank you so much. And we have One Acts this 16th to 18th of January. It's completely free. You guys should go. I recommend them. They'll be really good. Santa Barbara High School report. I'm moving on to Santa Barbara High School report. Earlier today, this report upcoming events. Okay, we're formal ASB Junior are currently playing our second and last all classes dance of the year. Computer Science opens Santa Barbara High School. It's exciting about the announcement of our new Computer Science program. We have an open house to learn more on January 13th at 6:30 in room 25. VADA seniors have a show up until February 1st in the Wall Space Gallery in the Funk Zone. Senior worked with studio art teachers Daniel Burnett and Wall Space Gallery curator Krista Dix to produce artworks in the theme home. Our 14th annual musical night will be in Santa Barbara High School Theater, January 25th, 24th, 30th, and 1st. This is complete student-produced musical and one of our most popular theater events this year. And yes, that's about it for Santa Barbara High School. Thank you so much, and pardon me for all the little mistakes, and yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Superintendent's report?
Yes, a couple more things to talk about. There will be a free screening of Dyslexia, the movie, this Friday, January 17th at 7 p.m. at Santa Barbara High School. The filmmaker Harvey Hubble will be on hand to lead a panel discussion after the movie. And I want to thank Sherry Ray, who's been a driving force in our new Parent Resource Center, parent at Santa Barbara High School, for making this happen. And with 1 in 5 people affected by dyslexia, this movie will certainly help raise awareness. Our secondary school open houses began this week. La Colinas open house is Thursday, and they will continue into early February. And the schedules are available at the back of the room and on the district's homepage as well. I want to remind everyone our transfer application window is open until February 18th. And I hope that everyone, board members and the public, mark their calendars for Monday, January 27th. Our first ever district-wide choral showcase is going to be held at San Marcos High School. Really want to congratulate and thank Carolyn Terrell-Brady for taking the lead in this. Each elementary through secondary will have a group perform a song of their choosing. The evening will close with the three high schools performing a beautiful choral piece that will be sung in French. I'm not going to try and tell you what it's called. Maybe Ms. Parker, would you like to say that since I know you speak French?
Cantique de Jean Racine.
Muchas gracias. I'd also like to remind the board and the community that our schools and district office will be closed on Monday, January 20th. We'll be celebrating and commemorating one of the greatest Americans ever, Martin Luther King Jr. As everyone is aware, this past week, the governor of the state of California announced his budget. And interestingly enough, because of all the scuttlebutt and gossip, he surprised everybody and announced it a day early, which was fascinating. So we got the info on Thursday instead of Friday. I want to remind everybody that his budget proposal is just the beginning of a long slog through the legislative process with lots of negotiating, ultimately resulting in 2 important dates: the May revise, where the governor will revise his January proposal based upon the revenues, projected revenues, which typically change somewhat, and then also the negotiations that have occurred between both legislative houses and the governor's office in relationship to his proposals. It's also important to understand that while it is just the first salvo, there's some interesting things that are in his proposal. Number one was the $6.5 billion that would fully eliminate the K-12 apportionment deferrals in the next fiscal year. If you'll recall, those deferrals was the interesting way that the government paid K-12 education by, instead of paying us in the month in which our apportionment was due by law, they would tell us, it was kind of the wimpy from the old Popeye. You give me a hamburger today, I'll give you 2 on Tuesday. Although we didn't get 2 on the following Tuesday, we just got the 1. And it ended up being approximately between 45 and 50% of the revenue for districts in California was deferred later in the month, some in fact to the next fiscal years, causing a whole host of problems for districts across our state. He also proposed 4.472, or it's been rounding up to 4.5 billion in additional funding for school districts in the local control funding formula, 316 million for Prop 39 support, which is our energy. Unfortunately, he cut the COLA in half that everyone had projected. So he's proposing a 0.8086% COLA. $188 million for an emergency repair program, which I thought was really good for facilities, which could be very helpful for one of our schools in particular. And he did fund $46.5 million for our new student assessment system, which also recognized that there is a dramatic change. He also proposed putting before the voters a constitutional amendment that would revise the existing requirement in relationship to the rainy day fund. In his proposal, he's setting aside 6.5% of the state revenues in any year for that fund. One of the things I wanted to say about the local control funding formula is to remind everybody that the idea regarding it is the restoration of full funding would take place over an 8-year period, 2021. It's hard to say it so long ago. With a specific percentage increase allocated for each of those 8 years. His proposal that he gave us this past week, increases the allocation for this next fiscal year by 10.9%. It's important to remember that that is an average across the state, and what each individual district gets is going to be still dependent upon the number of English learners, foster youth, students living in poverty, and then also, very importantly, what the gap is between each district where they are now and where they would eventually be between 2020, 21. So while there's a lot of interesting ideas, and clearly it's the first budget that I believe in the last 6 or 7 governor proposals in which there aren't cuts to K-12 education. So all in all, it represents some good news for kids in California. Ms. Jate, myself, and other members of her staff will be attending a governor's budget workshop tomorrow. We'll rise and shine before the crack of dawn and drive to our favorite city in California, Garden Grove, and we'll participate in the budget workshop, and I'm certain at our next board meeting we'll have a little more detail to share with the board in relationship to how his proposal impacts our K-12 district. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cash. Moving on to item C7, board comments and correspondence. Anything that anybody needs to share? Mr. Herron?
Just a couple of things. It's been a long time since our last meeting, but number one, the Christmas parade in Malpas. I mean, we've all joined in that, honoring the master, what were you called, Monique? Grand Marshal of the parade. We had a fantastic time. Barbara did a great job decorating our bicycles, and down the road we went, right behind the La Cumbre Band. It was wonderful. But last night I attended the Adelante board meeting, and the good news there is that the bathrooms are done. And we have brand new bathrooms at Adelante, and they were gorgeous. So, and everybody is thrilled, especially the kindergarten kids who have put up with hammering for the last several months. They're going to be estimated at their maximum next year at 265 students. And it will pose some problems, especially for 4th grade, as those children move through the 3rd grade into the 4th, 5th, and 6th as the years go by. They also approved a strategic plan, which I'll get you copies of, which was very good for the next their plan for the next 3 years or 4 years, and they did a good job on that. I also attended yesterday the audit committee and met with our staff, and you're going to get that report at the next meeting. I can let you know it's fantastic. Our auditors love us, and we have a great staff, and they do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, announcement of closed session action. We didn't take any reportable action in closed session. I will say that at the opening of regular session on item A3, appointment of David E. Cash, superintendent, as chief labor negotiator with Santa Barbara Teachers Association. That motion was made by Mr. Herron and seconded by Dr. Paz and passed unanimously. And then on item A4, the appointment of David E. Cash, superintendent, as chief labor negotiator with California School Employees Association. That motion was made by Mr. Herron and seconded by Ms. Idelson, and again passed unanimously. Now we move on to item C9, public comments on non-agenda matters within jurisdiction of the Board of Education. Do we have any?
We have one, and unfortunately, it is on an agenda item, but he has to leave. He wondered if he can talk at this point. It's on the Common Core, but Mr. Chris Grant.
Okay, board members, do you have any objections to that?
Mr. Chris Grant. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
And
To make it back to the discussion. Good evening. As a parent of 3 girls who range from 7th grade to college freshmen and have been advanced learners in math all their lives, I would like to offer a few observations as it relates to possibly the Common Core curriculum. In the 4th grade, my oldest daughter would get in trouble for reading in her math class because she was bored, waiting for the teacher to repeat concepts. The teacher couldn't differentiate that much. While she was at the top of her class, by the time the algebra readiness test came, she didn't pass it. We were fine with that, but it made me wonder how her path would have differed had she been challenged how many advanced learners like her experience that, and what our world would look like if we could support those kids throughout their education. My middle daughter did place into algebra in 7th grade and is on pace to take calculus as a junior. She's a sophomore, but I worry about what her transition will be like going into college. Since there are no math classes offered after calculus, will she face a void in her senior year? How can we better support these students aspiring in math and technology? I can see her also losing her passion for it. She tells us how the focus is on completing problem sets as opposed to going deeper, as we used to say in these discussions a few years ago, and wanting to use math to solve real-world problems. That was supposed to happen with the honors program. How will Common Core really be different? Or is it just another name change without supporting change in curriculum? My youngest daughter is also taking algebra in 7th grade and is on track for advanced math, if that's what she continues to choose. When she was younger, she too was having trouble getting stimulated in her math classes, often having not much to do. We supplemented that by giving her the EPGY program at home, which does math and language arts on the computer. She much preferred to do that rather than watching cartoons. So what we tried to do is integrate that into her math class and help the teacher differentiate by bringing EPGY into her class, but that was a disaster. All that really did was ostracize her from the other kids. And she too started to lose her passion for academics. And that was something that really tugged at me because I knew that she wanted to do so much more but felt like she couldn't. My point is that when we look at implementing the Common Core standards, we need to create paths that will provide balanced learning for all types of students throughout the academic continuum. I worry about keeping advanced learners engaged in their younger years and not providing algebra until the 8th grade, even when they are wanting more earlier.
20 seconds.
Without a curriculum to see, it's almost like we are slowing down the system in the early stages so that we don't have to teach as many advanced math classes. Is that how they do it in other countries where we often say they are so much more advanced? High school is not a time when we need to be adding more pressure by doubling up math classes, which are normally sequential. We all know these kids struggle enough trying just to balance their hormones.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
If we met each kid, let me finish my last 2 sentences. If we met each kid at their potential every year, we wouldn't have to. I hope the Common Core Foundation is not one which acts like cement blocks on our kids' feet, holding them down to a standard, but can be used more as a springboard, helping them to take flight and support them through it. We are putting our faith in you as our elected officials to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. D, acceptance of donations.
I move to accept with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. And then on to E, the consent agenda. Are there any items that board members?
Madam Chair, before you move forward, there is a revision to consent agenda item. It's not on here.
It's E1, approval of
E1,
student field
I'm sorry.
trips. Yeah. So you can see that there's a change on the amount for the Santa Barbara High School trip for augmenting the understanding of Shakespeare's works.
I would actually like to pull F2 just to abstain.
Any other items to pull? All right, do I have a motion with the exception of F2?
I make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And now we need a motion for F2, Human Resources Recommendations.
Make the motion to approve the human resources list.
I'll second it.
All right, a motion by Dr. Paz, seconded by Idelson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Abstain.
All right, that's 4-0 with 1 abstention. Okay. We will now move to the action agenda. First up is item G1, approval of the University of Nevada Speech and Audiology UNSUM Student Fieldwork Agreement. Dr. Cash.
Dr. Christensen, our Assistant Superintendent in Human Resources, will take items G1 and G2.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The district is requesting that the Board of Education take action to approve the agreement between the University of Nevada Speech and Audiology Department from the School of Medicine there for their students to come to our schools to have a clinical experience in the speech-language therapy area. This is an area of great need in our district, ongoing, and this just is a win-win situation for both the students having the clinical experience as well as our students, and the potential of hiring other great people is also there. So we request that you approve the agreement.
Board members? Dr. Paz.
I just had a really curious question of how we ended up connecting with them.
You know, we are such a great district that people come to us.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right.
It's true.
Is any further questions, or is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the University of Nevada Speech and Audiology Student Fieldwork Agreement.
Second.
Motion by Limon, seconded by Paz. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Now, item G2, approval to enter into a service agreement with Teacher Match LLC.
Yes, thank you. A lot of people, including myself, have spent a long time looking into the desirability of adopting the Teacher Match software, and I'd like to provide some background for you that is more background than what you found in the item. And I'd like to start out by talking a little bit about the research. According to a study conducted by the Tennessee Value-Added Assessment System, in the United States, students who are taught by poor teachers for 3 consecutive school years exhibit an average achievement gain of 29%. In contrast, students who have competent teachers for 3 years in a row exhibit an average achievement gain of 83%. So, I've attended a lot of conferences where Katie Haycock has presented on this matter about the importance of teacher quality and how students do when they have effective teachers 3 years in a row versus ineffective teachers 3 years in a row. And I'm convinced that it's really important that we do the right thing on the front end, so that we hire the most effective teachers possible on the front end, and do that in as much as an unbiased way as possible. So as background to how did we get to Teacher Match? After attending a superintendent's conference, Dr. Cash came back and said, I heard this presentation. I have no bias one way or another, but it sounds like it might be a great thing. Bring some people together, look into it, and come back with some recommendations. So I looked into it, and we actually had the vendor come out and present to some principals, to the HR department, and what we found is that based on research conducted in partnership with the NWEA, which is very similar to WestEd, which is kind of like a think tank and a research tank, and you know this, I'm sure. The University of Chicago, which is highly respected in the area of research, and the Education Analytics, which is a company composed of professors from the University of Wisconsin who actually have an program evaluation arm of the University of Wisconsin, got together and identified through research, 4 performance factors that produce highly effective teachers. And we are looking for teachers who have a positive impact on student achievement. That's what we want. And we want to hire those teachers with those qualities that are predictive of student achievement. So teaching skills, qualifications, attitudinal factors, and cognitive ability were identified as those most predictive of advancing student achievement. So part of first of all, Teacher Match does not replace the interview process. It does not replace letters of reference. It is an additional objective view of the candidates that come before us. When we have 200 to 300 applicants per position, as an example, in elementary teaching positions, we need a way to narrow that field and make sure that we're bringing in the best of the best at the front end, and in an as objective way as possible. So part of what Teacher Match includes is what's called an educator professional inventory that augments the application process. And it's at the heart of determining whether or not the teacher has those skills and dispositions to advance student achievement. The EPI is a series of over 100 multiple choice questions that measure the predictors that I just mentioned. And it's a timed exercise, no more than 2 minutes per question. I took the EPI, so I have I have direct knowledge of the kinds of questions that are on there, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But the advantage is really, as I see it, it minimizes the risk of ineffective hires. That really is important. We're looking at this year potentially non-renewing 15 teachers that we hired in the last 2 years, most of them last year. So we need to get better. We've done a lot already. We're requiring teachers to answer 12 questions in that application, and they're not easy questions. And we take a look at those, and we see, can they string some thoughts together in a coherent paragraph? And are their answers indicative of the kinds of things that Gallup looks for in the teacher perceiver and teacher insight questions? So this would augment that. So we really think that we need to even get better at minimizing the risk of ineffective hires. We've also done a really nice job with how we talk about teacher candidates afterwards, and how we have rank order them and then have a rich conversation around what will be the best match for our district. So although we've improved our practices, we want to get even better. And as indicated earlier, on November 21st, we had a group of people have a presentation from the vendor, and then after that, and believe me, Joanne Keynes and John Becchio and Amy Alzina, and I think you're here, asked hard questions, and they were fabulous, and they answered them to all of their satisfaction. So on December 2nd, I took the EPI, and they actually give you a percentile score on how you do, and there were some really hard math questions. There were some pretty difficult verbal questions, but then the other kind of questions were what really intrigued me, because there were questions about, do you believe that intelligence is fixed, or can a teacher make a difference? And it's like multiple choice questions. And knowing what I know about those things, I could see where they were headed with it. They also asked very specific questions about assessment strategies used in the classroom. They also asked questions that were designed to get at whether or not teacher believes in restorative approaches. So it was a very illuminating, tough inventory for me. And I think I already know quite a bit. I didn't do so well on the math. It was 5 o'clock at night, and I was kind of tired. So I was a little disappointed that I didn't do better on it. But I still felt really good about the answers that I knew were spot on. And I realized that those are the kind of things we're looking for. The cost of hiring ineffective teachers, and this is a conservative estimate, I looked online, I did the research, is about $10,000 per person that we have to replace. We lost about 12 last year that were non-reelects. We're going to lose another 15 this year. This program can help leverage and reduce those costs, I really believe. The cost to us is less than $30,000 per year. We're looking at a minimum of $80,000 cost per year just to replace teachers. If we'd done a better job up front, and I think we worked hard at this, but we need more objective measures to really help us more clearly identify the best candidates. When we will get back a report on each of those candidates, it's actually a scored report, and it will also show us areas of strength and weakness, and we can use that to devise a professional learning plan for those individual teachers, and we can identify trends to see, well, do they need some training in restorative approaches, or is there something going on with the math that we need to provide some more professional learning on? Because somebody's weak in one area doesn't mean that we wouldn't necessarily choose them. But if we see a series of red all the way across, we wouldn't want to spend our time when we have over 200 applicants talking to a person that scores that low on those research-based questions about dispositions and skill. The Gallup teacher insight measures primarily disposition and the ability to get along well with students. We need to know more than that they can get along with students. We need to know if they've got the intellectual ability as well as the attitudes to help our students advance in their learning. So, we also want to participate with Teacher Match as a research district. The cost is half if you decide to participate as a research district. I called Vallejo District today. They were among the first in California to use Teacher Match. They're extraordinarily happy with it. It is helping them identify better candidates up front. I wanted to have that information for you this evening. The company is a fairly new company, but I feel it's backed by sound research, and it's really a great direction for us to head. We're not signed up forever for it. The contract renews once a year. They've committed to not increasing their prices ever. So that's the information I have to present to you, and I respectfully request that you approve the purchase of Teacher Match so we can do it right up front.
Thank you, Dr. Christensen. That certainly preempted a lot of my questions. Board members, do you have any further comments, questions, or concerns? Ms. Idelson?
Couple. Is there a limit to the number of applicants taking the test, or say, I mean...
Great question. We're going to require all applicants who go on to EdJoin, they will have to click on the link and they have to take the EPI.
Okay, and is it limited only to new hires, or you said you took it, that was just as an experiment? Or?
I took it because I wanted to know what we were buying.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to go in blindly to something, because then I'd have to answer to you about it.
Right.
Because you probably asked me what was on it. So there really is no limit. They have requested that we ask the teachers we hired last year if they would like to take the inventory. The cabinet would like to take the inventory to see how they do. So I'm waiting to find out whether or not they'll release those questions to our cabinet.
And then from the test, are there is there information that basically indicates more? I mean, I take it it's a graded test, or it's...
It comes back as a percentile score in each of the areas, the 4 areas, the skills, the qualifications, because a part of what they do is they have to submit a portfolio, and where you would answer a lot of questions about your teaching background and experience and skills. So that actually gets a rating as well. So they come back and they say, well, here's how this candidate did in these 4 areas, and they give them a red, green, or yellow. As far as green, of course, is, you know, among the 90th percentile, and it goes down from there. And so we look at that whole picture, and then we decide, do we want to bring them in to talk to them?
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, that's fine.
Dr. Paz?
So we're going to do this with new hires, including people who are hired temp?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments? I really regarding this as a one-year experiment, and definitely want to get feedback on how it goes. Of course, I'm concerned that we may have, and I would be curious to have identified teachers in the district that get high evaluations that we know are excellent teachers that move student achievement, to see how they would do on it. Because I'm just concerned that we might screen out somebody that has a record. I mean, I could see it being great for new teachers in particular, but teachers coming from other districts that have already been working for 5 or 10 years, that have fabulous references, that have fabulous student test scores, and I'd hate for this to block them if some concerns come up. So I appreciated hearing that it's just one measure that you're going to be looking at. So that's great to know, and I'll be curious to hear how it comes back.
Right.
Is there a motion? Silence.
I'll move the approval to enter into a service agreement with Teacher Match LLC.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Moved by Mr. Herron and seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item G3, the approval of release of request for qualifications for Proposition 39 Energy Conservation and Energy Efficiency Services. Dr. Cash.
I'm going to Dr. Hetyunk. Did a Mr. Herron. Yeah. David Hetyunk will be up. I just want to remind the board that Prop 39 released a planning grant to us of approximately $185,000 and then additional implementation funds of a little over $400,000. Every single person I talk to is recommending that districts engage the services of someone that's intimately familiar with the regulations surrounding Prop 39, which unfortunately seem to have grown day by day. So, Mr. Hetyunk.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. First, I'd like to apologize for a little typographical error in the third paragraph, the year 2013. My typing was a little bit off, and spell checker didn't catch that one. Dr. Cash is 100% correct in that it seems like every time we get a email or information from somebody, the rules become more cumbersome. The guidelines have changed. I think we're finally at the point now where the state of California is ready to publish a couple guidebooks on what to do. But we want to make sure that we not only have someone who can do the energy audit for us and make sure that that audit meets all the requirements of the state of California, but then also help us with the guidelines for contracting, because there are some specifics in the contracting guidelines that are different than the typical requirements for public works contracts, as far as specifying, for instance, a type of energy control systems. It has to be more of an open platform. We can make sure that it's compatible with our system, but we can't say it has to be the same brand as what we have in the district. So there's a lot of nuances. Spoken with a lot of people who have been contacting me wanting to know what we're going to do, and I've been telling them that we're going to ask our board to release a request to bring in a company to help guide us through this process. The planning funds that we receive are to last over all of the years that we get funds. We get all of our planning funds up front, and then we get our implementation funds in subsequent years, but no more planning funds. Any funds not used for planning can be used for the projects. So if you're extra frugal with your planning money, you can save some of that for projects. Our charter schools have all three applied for and received their planning funds. And we're curious, the rules, I haven't seen a published rule yet on how charter schools are going to be treated that don't pay their own utility bills, where you can't specifically differentiate their electrical costs or their fuel costs for gas, other than Peabody, which has its own meters on its own site. So we're looking for a little bit clearer guidance in the future on this also. We've written this so our charters can join us and use our same consultant, or they can go on their own. I've talked to one principal already. Peabody is leaning towards partnering with us, using the same consultant, going through the same process to be consistent. I have a meeting with Adelante Charter this week, and I'll be meeting with Santa Barbara Charter in the near future.
Thank you, Mr.
So I want to ask your permission to release the proposal.
Board comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion by Dr. Faz and seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor to release the request for qualifications for Prop 39 energy conservation and energy efficiency services?
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item G4, approval of Accuvant contract for ClearPass installation and configuration. Dr. Cash.
Yeah, I'm going to be smart and ask Todd Rickman to address this, since it requires language that I'm unfamiliar with.
Good evening. I'm asking the board's approval to hire a company called Accuvant to help us install something called ClearPass, which is an Aruba product. During the original plan for the wireless, no plan was made for allowing people to log into our wireless network to actually authenticate, which leaves our network completely unsecure to the outside people who might want to get in and do damage to it. We have the capability right now of forcing people to log in, but with how the system is configured, it's very difficult. It's very tedious for a person to log in. It would be very difficult for students to do. It would be very difficult for even teachers to do. We looked into, typing up a how-to, and it was, 20 steps long. So what we would like to do is, the district purchased a product called ClearPass prior to or during the initial planning for the wireless, in order to handle some of this. There was never any plan or any investigation into how difficult ClearPass is to install. It's beyond our capabilities to install. In fact, Aruba themselves has hired Accuvant to install ClearPass in all their facilities around the country. That's how complicated it is. So we would like permission to hire Accuvant to install ClearPass for us, and as a bonus, they're going to review all the wireless configs or configuration settings on our controllers and make sure that we have everything set up correctly that will allow ClearPass to work flawlessly when it's installed.
Thank you. Board? May I have a motion if there are no questions or
I'm
comments?
just curious how much we
Mr.
paid for
Herron?
ClearPass.
I would have to go back and look. I'm not sure. It will be installed on two servers for redundancy, one here at the district office, one on another site. So if one server goes down, we always have access to be able to authenticate to the wireless network.
Ms. Idelson?
I just want to understand, so when you say things are not secure now, is that like secure for somebody driving by, tying into the internet through the schools?
Yeah, so
or-
right now we have a password, one password that gives anyone access. Anyone who knows it can get on our network.
So I could park out in the parking lot and
Absolutely,
use the internet? Yeah.
absolutely. And it doesn't give us any visibility to who's using our network. And so when people authenticate, we can see who's where. It allows us to troubleshoot better, because if a teacher calls and says, hey, I couldn't get on this afternoon, I can look exactly where that person was when they tried to authenticate, look at the exact access point they were trying to authenticate to, and see what the issue is.
Ms. Dimon?
How long is this good for? Is this something that we need to do annually?
It's just, it's one time, they're going to come out and install it for us, configure it, and then once it's configured and installed, the management is actually very easy. It's just getting it up and running that's really difficult.
Dr. Paz?
I was going to ask the same question, but you answered it. Thank you.
My question is, when will this happen?
As soon as you approve it, they're ready to go. We have 2 servers on order to run the software, and so it would be just pending the arrival of the servers. A lot of work, what's nice with technology is a lot of work can be done remotely. They will be sending someone to the site a couple times, but most of the work will be done remotely.
Thank you. Dr. Paz?
I'll make the motion to approve Accuvent contract for ClearPass installation and configuration.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Rickman. On to item G5, which is the approval for the purchase of iPads and cases for the iPad pilot program.
Well, we spent an hour and a half in December having a conversation about the pilot program.
It was 2 hours, Dr. Cash.
I'm sorry, 2 hours. How time flies when you're having fun. And we've certainly attempted to answer as many questions that have been presented to us by members of the community, our own staff, and members of the board. And so we are ready to move forward with our pilot program. We'd like to put iPads in the hands of students at our 4 schools, Adams, Franklin, Washington, and La Cuesta. So both Mr. Rickman, Ms. Jate, our iPad principals are all here to answer any questions that anyone has. And I think we also have some technology coaches that snuck in as well to answer any questions board members may have that have not been answered to date.
All right, board, where are we with this? Any comments? Anything you want to bring up? Ms. Idelson?
So all of the Xerox handling, all the financing, will that come later? Or this, we're basically investing in the iPads now and then
Right.
distributing them?
And then we'll go through the process that we've described
Right.
where individual families will make their decisions as to which way they're going to go.
Right, so this places the order, the iPads arrive, and then we're,
We go through the process that we've described to you.
Mr. Herron?
I guess just a couple background questions. Once again, I want to thank Mr. Rickman for answering a ton of questions for me over the weekend. I hope I didn't ruin your weekend.
No, it kept me on my toes.
Okay. The decision for iPads was made 8-9 months ago, in essence. I mean, when you first presented it to us, iPad was the choice that you felt very strongly about.
Yes.
And that hasn't changed.
No.
And so, you know, I'm taking that in very good faith, because the more I read what's happening across the nation, iPad is the gold standard. And I think the LA Times said, you know, one district, we don't have the gold. And some districts are experimenting with several different tools to see in a pilot which one they really want to use. we're putting everything in line with iPads.
Right.
And you still feel strongly that's the way to go?
I do.
Okay. Obviously, I'm in favor of technology. I'm in favor of doing something in the classroom. And if iPad is what's before us, I presume we're going to go with iPads. And so this is really, to me, a decision about purchasing iPads, which I'm in favor of at this point. Even though I have some questions about, I don't have an iPad Air Retina. My kids don't have it. We're giving it to third graders. And I still wonder why a third or fourth grader needs an iPad Air with Retina display when there's other tools that are less costly. Now, you've explained that to me, and I'll accept that explanation. But it just seems we're giving a tool to third graders. And I don't know how many of your children up here, if you have iPad Air Retina, but my guess is it's not a real prevalent thing that is everyday use. But having said that, I'm just going to reiterate one more time my basic concern, not as to buying them, but as to what happens once we have them. And I know very originally we had a PowerPoint that showed what the next 4-year projections are, how many schools each year and how many students. But one of your answers to one of my questions was, what is the expected lifetime of these tools? And your basic answer was, if there are funds available and how, depending on how it goes, the goal is to change these iPads every 3 years.
Yeah, the rotation ideally would be every 3 years.
Every 3 years. So that leads me to my basic concern, is we're asking families to lease, to buy for 3 years, knowing full well at the end of 3 years, education says it probably is not going to be a very useful tool compared to what is available 3 years from now. And the more people that lease, the more funds the district will have, the less money the district will have to spend on the program. So in essence, if every student leased this first year, it wouldn't cost the district almost anything for the tool. And most of the people who are leasing, in my view, may not be making the educated guess or educated decision, and we're asking the people who can least afford it to subsidize the families that can afford it. And I just think that's backwards. And I really think it's backwards. And I guess I would hope that every single student who's thinking about leasing would think seriously about it, because they're going to be leasing a tool that possibly is not the state of the art once they own it. And that has nothing to do with buying them. That has to do with the program. And that's an administrative thing on your end, and Dr. Cash, you're going to have to face that. But I can't believe that next year, this first year may go fine, but next year and the following year and the following year, when we get into junior high schools and high schools, I don't think we can plan the same percentage that are leasing versus buying as time goes on. And so this is a pilot, and so I appreciate that's a pilot, and I'm glad we're doing a pilot. But I just want to express my very concern that we are not doing a lot of families who don't have an extra $20 a month, letting them think that this is good for them. Thank you.
Ms. Dimon?
Thank you, Mr. Herron, for your comments. I've gone back and forth. I think from the beginning I had questions about the program, and there's no doubt for me that this is where we're at in 2014. We need to move in this direction. I'm approaching this and seeing this as a pilot program. For me, however tonight's vote kind of turns out is not a free-for-all, let's go, every school is going to get it fast. I actually want this process to go slow. And I want it to go slow because I've raised concerns, and I'm not sure that I feel like it needs to roll out to actually get some of the answers. And one has been about the district capacity. Do we have the capacity to manage this? A few thousand more iPads out there. Internet problems, authentication problems, whatever, right? I also want to know about the rollout and distribution process. I want to know how it goes. I think we got some great information from the parents who took the survey, but that was only survey information. And I'm not clear who really is going to want an iPad to own or not. And that leads me to cost. I think cost has been this, this is expensive. This is a big investment. And I guess if I had to use a word, it'd probably be investment over expense. But I realize the importance for this investment, but it's a big one. And it's a big one after Ms. Jate would be very proud. She's taught us to be very conservative in our thinking and know that the state's, not always in the healthiest of situations. But the other piece is I want to know, I want to get the feedback from families, from students, from teachers. I talked at one point about not wanting to see this as the new note, the new piece of paper, the new packet that gets filled out. And it's important for me that as we go through this process, we not only think about this is what we need to do in 2014 because this is a direction to go. I mean, clearly, if you look across, we've migrated as a board, no more paper, right? And we're doing all kinds of things with the iPad up here that we wouldn't otherwise be doing if we had traditional notebooks. But I also need to better understand how, on top of the skills that students are going to gain with their familiarity in using a tablet, getting online, doing research, how that's going to yield student outcomes beyond the skills they're gaining. So there's several areas for me that are still question marks, but I'm at a point where I don't think we're going to get more answers unless we roll it out, but I want to be cautious about it. I don't want everyone to think that this is a go-ahead, everyone's doing it, and that they should expect it in 6 months, because I don't know what it's going to be like in 6 months. So I am prepared to give it my vote in favor of it, but I am I'm walking down this path with questions in mind and looking for some answers as we move this forward. So thank you.
Dr. Paz.
Just a quick comment. I had a lot of the same concerns that our fellow board members have shared, and we talked and had a great conversation in many ways. And I feel like, this is an opportunity, I think, for us as a school district to do that test, to find out how it's going to work out. And for me, I think, my concerns are still going to be centered. They'll be centered in many ways around families, but also on teachers. And for me, that's always been the ongoing thing of how best to make sure we are supporting our teachers in their process. And I think, at this point in time, I feel that I've gotten enough information back from staff to feel really comfortable in knowing that, at the heart of what we're trying to do is to support the teachers. And so I'm comfortable in wanting to approve this and move this forward, because I feel, in many ways, it's just, I feel like we're in a room and it's collapsing around us. We got to get going. And I think in many ways, I don't see we have too many other options at this point in time, because I think in my own self-reflection, I use technology every day, can't get away from it, and we see it in kids who are using it in many ways. As much as parents want to stick, give a little bit of a barrier for their kids, they're still going to be interacting with it in some way, shape, or form. And we do have to prepare our kids for the 21st century. We are living in it every day. And so I think we need to be cognizant of that as well. And I think, there's going to be a balance, I think, in that process. And I think parents are well aware of how that balance plays out with their kids. And They know best for their children as well, but I think we can't escape the fact that it's going to be integrated within what we're doing. It's going to be integrated in the Common Core. So I'm supportive of where we're going right now.
Ms. Idelson?
I have a question actually for the two principals. I see Fran and three. Well, oh, okay, okay.
And they'll need to come to the mic?
Or
have a
two
mic
or
handed
one.
to you.
Just
Somebody?
sort of a general question, yeah. I think, and this is sort of framed as a parent, because so often, you know, you give your child something and you visualize what's going to play out from the point that you've handed them something new, and it becomes something else potentially. And I just want to take from you, the night before the iPads are rolled out, what do you anticipate that's going to feel like? Are you going to feel this is going to be the greatest thing? Kids are going, or students are going to embrace it. Teachers are going to be happy and content with it, or do you get this sort of dread, nightmarish sense?
Wow. I'll let Amy go first.
I know that my teachers are just going to be excited. They're waiting on pins and needles right now to hear the yes from you all. I know my students as well. As I was leaving this evening, they said, Mrs. Elsina, when are we going to know? When are we going to know? They want to know, you know, and they want to know that it's coming. I think for me, just like you all share those same concerns about hands-on learning still taking in place, and that project-based learning and having that healthy balance is at the forefront of my mind. And we have a Montessori program at our school. And we have a Montessori program at our school because I firmly believe that children learn best through their hands. But at the same time, Montessori has also embraced technology. And so we have to move forward with the times. And how we do that is by educating our children and creating those healthy balances, and our teachers creating those healthy balances within our classrooms. So we're very excited, but we do share, you know, the same concerns that you do have as well. And but we have to move forward, and we're excited about moving forward.
I think like with anything that's new, when it's exciting, there will always be the butterflies of what's going to happen, and part of that is because of the unknown, and change always has unknowns in it. But what I think mostly I imagine that I'm going to see, and more than imagine, I know I'm going to see, is I'm going to walk in classrooms and have my mind blown on a regular basis. I really do believe that. I walked into our math classroom the other day. Actually, it wasn't in the classroom, it was in the lab, because they had to go from the classroom to the lab. And here are La Cuesta students working on Wolfram Alpha. Now, if you know Wolfram Alpha, and they're completely engaged in this. Now, these are not students who traditionally are deeply engaged in the study of mathematics, but they were. And so that's the kind of thing I expect that I'm going to see. And I don't kid myself that there won't be ups and downs and bumps and sideways, but I think the other piece is far going to outweigh any struggles that we have to go through.
Okay, thank you. I just sort of needed a reality check of, it's not going to all of a sudden be, oh my gosh, what did we get ourselves into, I think.
No, we're prepared for it.
Okay.
I will just add a couple things. One is that the funding source isn't listed. You've said it many times. This is Common Core implementation funding, which is currently one-time funding. And so it's not coming from essentially general fund revenues. And my other thing I'll point out is that we are approving the purchase of the iPads and cases tonight. We still had some questions about the program, and I think that we'll have to talk about that again at some time within the next month or so, see where we're at, because there were some things that came up in the iPad workshop that weren't resolved yet. And so if you have any that you remember from that, or anything that you want to revisit, please let me and Dr. Cash know, and maybe we can have it come forward again. All right?
Yeah, I just would like to comment that I really appreciate the board's comments. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that was said. I think we're going into this with our eyes wide open. I believe that our most important resources are our teachers, regardless of the technology, that our teachers will make the technology wonderful. But I'm under no illusions that this might not work. I'm very pleased with the approach that we're taking. I got a phone call from someone at Conchella Unified. They're a district similar to us in size. They're about 18,000. They're a unified district. They were calling me actually about Illuminate because they're thinking about going to Illuminate, but it came up that they just rolled out 18,000 iPads and they just went for it. So I'm really happy with the road.
Wait, and I want to add, I think that was through a bond, though, right?
That was through a
great.
bond, yeah. So, yes, but they
Still
just
a
were
lot,
like,
that's
let's
still-
go. I am very happy with the approach we're taking. I think slow is fast. So, yeah.
All right, board members, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the purchase of iPads and cases for the iPad pilot program.
Thank you, Dr. Paz.
I'll second it.
And Ms. Idelson. All those in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. I should ask, when are they going to arrive?
And all the kids.
We were told we would have them from the time we ordered them in 3 weeks.
3 weeks, all
And then
right.
there will be at least a week of configuration, and so we're looking at about a month away.
All right, thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Rickman.
I'd love to actually be at the distribution.
we will all want to
at
do
any
that.
of the schools.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, we'll let you know. Absolutely.
All right, we're moving on to item G6. We have two math items on this agenda. The first one is on the action agenda. It's to do with high school math, and this is Santa Barbara Unified School District's recommendation for an integrated math pathway. Dr. Cash.
We're very fortunate. We have two outstanding teachers on special assignment, Dr. Craig Schneider and Ms. Janet Hollister. And Dr. Drotti is going to introduce the item.
The teachers and administration of Santa Barbara Unified School District are recommending that the Board of Education adopt the integrated math pathway. Before you make the decision, I'd like for Dr. Craig Schneider and Mrs. Janet Hollister, two teacher leaders in the district, to provide an explanation of how we came to the integrated conclusion.
Yay, we're on. Okay. Good evening. Thank you. Yes. So first I want to say thanks for having us back. Good seeing you all. And I want to introduce, we have lots of math folks in the room, math teachers from our elementaries and secondary schools. So there's a lot out there. I know Tracy Thompson is there, and Kirk Taylor's in the back. Oh, we have Mary Ziegler, who's our math assistant principal at DP. Gina, Liz Brown, Gina Pierce, and who else? I think Jackie. So lots of folks are here. And I want to talk about first the integrated pathway that we are recommending to the board. We went through, as we talked about in the math workshop meeting in December, a very significant process in our secondary math departments to learn about and understand the difference between the integrated sequence for high school courses in Common Core and the traditional sequence of Common Core math courses at high school. Our math department spent several whole group meetings at their sites, at their respective sites, analyzing, and I think this was one of the documents that we've shared with you about the kind of work that they did to analyze the math topics, the math standards of each of these sequences in high school. All of our departments have made their recommendation. So 8 secondary math departments, that includes the 4 high schools and the 4 junior highs. And 7 of the 8 have recommended through their analysis and provided rationale for their recommendation, the integrated sequence for high school level mathematics. One school chose not to come to a consensus or was unable to, and we'll talk about that as well. Here are some of the quotes that our schools that did make a recommendation of integrated, what their rationales were. And so I presented this at the board workshop in December. And one of the key things I think our folks have learned is that regardless of the sequence chosen, traditional or integrated, and I'm going to bring this visual back up again, the overlap between these two sequences, thanks Janet, is the highlighted color year to year. And it's hard to quantify it necessarily, but you can see all the overlap. So our teachers realized there is so much that is the same regardless of whether you go traditional or integrated in Common Core year to year. The thing that was extremely powerful for our math teachers was that the integrated math program continued the coherence that Common Core really talks about. K-8, by definition in Common Core, is integrated. There are 5 domains of mathematics that every year from kindergarten through 8th grade, students will explore, learn, gain skills in, and it's the 5 main domains of mathematics. And so our secondary teachers said, why would we do anything different than that for high school? It seems to make sense for students. And so that's some of the summary that you'll see here. I do want to talk about one school that said that they were unable to come to consensus. They said it's because we want a little more information. And this was again back in November. So they've gained some more information since that statement. But one of the things I want to point out in their discussion, while they were not able to come to consensus, they do agree in that department that integrated makes sense for students. But many of us, the department members, were hesitant due to the practicalities. They needed more information, what would happen day to day. So in essence, you have all 8 schools that pedagogically, instructionally are agreeing that integrated is the recommendation they want to provide with their rationale, and that's what we want to submit to our board.
All right, board members? Any thoughts on this, Ms. Idelson?
Of course. I found it very interesting in much of the material how the sense, well, several things. One, that the current traditional, that my generation thinks of traditional, isn't really what would be Common Core traditional, that I think was emphasized. And then secondly, it was interesting learning that the idea of having in our quote-unquote traditional scheme of things that we've experienced for so many years, algebra, then geometry, Algebra 1, geometry, and Algebra 2, was a throwback to the turn of the century. I guess the article said 1894 was when that was determined, because it was part of getting as much math as you could early before school stopped, whereas now we go on. Is that your understanding of that? What's the origin of this idea?
I definitely agree that that could be the historical origin, but I will say that there are states currently, prior to Common Core, who did their traditional, not in how our state tends to think of math traditionally. They have done it where you do Algebra 1 and then Algebra 2 and then geometry. So they want to tie the 2 years of algebra together because they don't like that gap between those 2 courses, and then they put geometry afterwards. So their traditional, and I believe this was the state of Indiana, their traditional, when they're talking about Common Core traditional versus Common Core integrated, they had to compare it to their old way of thinking of traditional. So you already have differences in how states think about traditional.
So, right. So my understanding is traditional being breaking up the subjects into
separate domains. Right.
And I tend to think that to learn, and especially with a Common Core model, that having things integrated would really help so much more, because you arrive at a problem, whether it's about geometry or algebra or how you're going to solve it, statistics. If you have that going on throughout, you're going to really have an advantage there. And also, as kids, students learn to get excited about things, somebody who, maybe is spending an entire year in geometry may be really not enjoying it. And this way they'll have more options happening throughout. So,
really, the design of Common Core is not unique to Common Core, it's mathematics. Mathematics is a coherent discipline.
it is made up of various topics or domains of mathematics that traditionally in this country, many states at high school level, higher level mathematics have chosen to isolate or to have these separate domains and create courses out of them. Many countries, most countries outside of the US, never think of teaching mathematics that way, in isolated courses called algebra or geometry or second-year algebra. Because mathematics, again, by its nature, is a connected and coherent discipline that, starting from kindergarten, those connections are necessary for kids to make sense of mathematics. And so your example of a geometry student who's really not enjoying that, and a very easy argument to make might be that student isn't seeing how geometry is connected to other mathematical disciplines or mathematical domains, or outside of mathematics to science, to technology, to computers, to engineering. So that's the big concept of Common Core, is to bring coherence to mathematics, and it's by design. K-8 is definitely an integrated situation in Common Core. The state has offered options for higher level mathematics to be integrated or to stick with how we traditionally have done things, which is isolating these courses into separate domains. In our district, teachers have suggested and recommended to you that it's an integrated approach for high school that seems to make most sense.
Thank you. Other board members?
I have a few things on my list. I think the first thing I would like to talk about is who this affects, because this does not affect a single existing high school student. It will affect not all of our incoming ninth graders next year. If you are currently a geometry student in 8th grade, you will continue to follow the traditional path throughout your high school career. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As things phase in over the next 3 years.
Yes, we are. Go ahead.
So what about current algebra students? Will they go into the first year of integrated math?
Current algebra students,
In 8th grade.
No matter what grade, if they are successful in that course, they will continue in that traditional Common Core. That's
Hello, Dr. Schneider.
Is that good? Got my wedding ring back. That is current algebra students, no matter what grade, 8th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, if they are successful this year in that course, then the design is, because Common Core is getting implemented for the first time this upcoming August, it's kind of like that idea of we don't want to change requirements on you partway through your high school graduation requirements, and so we don't want to switch folks that are already partway through. So anyone that is in algebra being successful by the end of this year, they would go on to geometry based on our current geometry course.
Okay, so that means, and the majority of 8th graders are currently in algebra. So it will be a minority of 8th graders that are affected by this next year, and also high school students that would have needed to repeat Algebra 1. Assume if you failed the course, you'd go back instead and you'd take Math 1 or Integrated Math 1?
That probably would be what high school math teachers would make recommendations for that student in 9th grade who wasn't successful in our 97 version of that Algebra 1 course. Let's put you in Math 1.
Okay.
Would make most sense to me.
All right. And, okay, so that, I just want to be clear on that, and for the public to understand that. You hear me hesitating over the title, because that's one thing that bothers me, is this whole idea of Math 7, Math 8, and then Math 1, even though I would really think of first grade math as Math 1. And I know that we're talking about, sometimes you see Roman numerals instead for this. When I looked it up in terms of the Common Core, it was originally like Model Math 1 for the high school level. And of course, if every district, if California and UCs are looking at it and it's going to be called Math 1 and we're going to make it with Roman numerals, that's fine. But to me, it makes some sense to call it something like Integrated Math 1, so that it doesn't have the connotation or the connection or confusion when people are talking about textbooks, for example, at the elementary level, because those will eventually come forward. I think it would be really helpful for parents for the upcoming years to see a comparison of the course descriptions. We have existing course descriptions for the current math program. It would be great to say, this is what students at this level would have taken, and this is what it's going to look like under the Common Core. And it's the Common Core with California additions, which I think that the public needs to pay attention to as well, because sometimes you'll look at these national articles about the Common Core and they're not taking into account what's going on in California in particular. So I think that that would be helpful. I also note that we are about to have high school and junior high open houses. I think it would be great to have information about the Common Core math transition in particular available for parents to look at and to understand which of their students would be affected, and that we're talking about it. It certainly will not be decided tonight about the junior high level, but it will be for freshman parents or incoming freshman parents that are going to be at these open houses over the next few weeks at our high schools. I think it would be a great way to get the information out. And my last quick question, I guess, is curriculum. For the integrated math, once this decision is made, what are teachers going to be talking about in terms of curriculum and not trying to reinvent the wheel if it's out there that could support what they're doing?
So the task after this decision is made is for our district to work on implementing this first set of courses for next August. And so that means spending time between now and then building these courses. I'd like to hear more what you mean by reinventing the wheel, because one of the things that is definitely out there right now is we have textbooks that have their cover that says Common Core, and we want to make sure that we are educated in terms of the types of books we would ever invest in, talking about investment.
What I'm referring to is actually what Ms. Hollister talked about when we had the math workshop, and she said that there were already things out there, that it wasn't true that there weren't resources available, and so I just want to be sure that our teachers are looking at these resources and thinking about that.
And so the state of Utah adopted an integrated pathway, and so the state of Utah has online materials. I believe Georgia has something that's called a coordinate algebra and an integrated geometry, when you talk about what the names of courses are, looking at how what Georgia has is related to what we're trying to adopt. There's also in the San Diego area, High Tech High, that's working on building courses. And so there's people out there that are doing this work. And so as we move forward, we need to look at what other people are doing. And so those are three places that we could look for resources, and there might be more out there. Actually, I know that San Ynez right now is in the process of building courses also. And so Ventura Unified, Oxnard, and Fillmore adopted an integrated pathway, and so there are people around us that we can start making connections and seeing, in the broader Tri-County region what's happening in this area. So I wouldn't think that we're alone in trying to do this, that there's people in our local area and there's entire states. There's a third state that I can't come up with that adopted an integrated pathway. So we need to explore what's out there.
Super. Ms. Edelson.
Real quick follow-up. Can you speak to, say, a student moving into the district if we were to adopt the integrated from a traditional Common Core district, how they would, join us in that situation?
I think there might be a couple of issues at hand there. One is, how would they join us and work in their new course that they have come and joined in? That would be where we, as a set of teachers, would really have to examine what is it that they have gained from their earlier experience, if it's in a traditional pathway. So if we're talking a ninth grader who did Algebra 1, Common Core Algebra 1, and then they come to Santa Barbara Unified and they are a 10th grader going into Math 2, we would have to do a really good job of assessing what did they experience in their 9th grade year, in their Algebra 1 year, and what are the gaps that there may be for them, and what have they already done. And again, that's part of this work that helps us with this, to show that there is already so much overlap it doesn't matter which pathway you choose, the amount of overlap year to year is I'd say 90% identical. So it's finding that extra 10% that students coming out of our district are either missing or have in addition to. On a second point, in terms of UC and going off to college, it is clear from UC that they accept student applicants who have had a combination of traditional and integrated Common Core math coursework on their transcripts. So that's also a helpful piece of information.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Limon.
Well, it's been interesting to kind of follow this. I actually want to thank the both of you for all your help, because I don't know if everybody knows how you met with us. You took our phone calls, you answered our emails, and you spent a lot of hours working with teachers to bring forward what, I've been trying to look at this and explaining to folks that that the integrated versus traditional is a model, that the pathways are the next phase, but this is the model that we kind of choose. And one of the concerns that I know that I've heard has been, well, what do you do when you don't have textbooks? And I think, well, gosh, that's higher ed. You pull the best pieces from different literature and you move that forward, whether it's a reader or whether it's, now we do online classes, so that's all, or at least online space to host this information. So I think it's really interesting how in some ways this is the real world. I mean, you pull the best information to put it together to deliver quality education. I know one of the things that has been discussed in higher ed has been the fact that a lot of majors require statistics, and in part is because students really don't get that in the K through 12 to the level that they need it. And I think that that's a absolutely real world skill you need on a regular basis. So I think I feel that I'm supportive of the integrative model, like kind of the iPads. We go with it and see where it takes us. But I do think that it's a little bit beyond, like, we're not out there not knowing what we're doing, not knowing where you want to do. I think that there is some direction, and I think we're moving in the direction that I think is going to be good for the students. So thank you for your time that you've invested in this. You've invested lots and lots of hours.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I need a motion to approve the integrated math pathway for high school math courses.
I'll do it. I'll make a motion.
Ms. Idelson?
To adopt the integrated math path.
Okay.
Second.
And Mr. Herron, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you, and we look forward to updates on placement and course descriptions and curriculum and professional development. Just a little to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Next up is item G7, board action on student discipline case numbers 2013/14-06 and 2013/14-12. Mr. Herring.
In relationship to 2013-14-06, we did change the recommendation of the hearing panel, and if we pass this motion, I move that we accept the one school year full expulsion, but suspend it and at a different high school, a different junior high school.
That's the motion by Mr. Herron. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously on the first case, -06.
2013/14-12. Again, the recommendation was a full expulsion. I will move that we do a one-year full expulsion, but suspend it at a different high school.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Herron and second by Dr. Paz. All those in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously as well.
I think you said high school.
Oh. Is it?
Okay.
The first one was a junior high school.
You did say that. You corrected yourself.
Oh, did I? Okay.
All right, moving on to the conference agenda. First up is H1, an update on Athletics Inclusion Action Plan. Dr. Cash.
Yes, board members, we did present our draft of our athletics inclusion plan. The board requested that we go back out and seek some additional input, which our special education department did, along with our 3 outstanding athletic directors. And they're here to present what they learned. So we have John Shetler, Mike Steeren from our special education department, and our athletic directors who are moving forward. Abe Jahadami from San Marcos High School, Dan Feldhaus from Dos Pueblos High School, and Joe Chenoweth from Santa Barbara High School. Gentlemen.
Good evening. As Dr. Cash mentioned, we presented in August the draft of the athletics inclusion plan to you all, and we're asked to go back and get some additional parent feedback, which we did, and we just wanted to share that with you all today. So in October, we took the draft of this plan to our staff special education parent advisory committee and presented it to that group. And then in November, during one of our parent trainings, we had a morning and an evening session. We presented the plan to them as well and solicited feedback from that group. Based on the feedback that we received from those folks, we would like to amend the plan in a couple of ways. And there's one kind of theme that came up a few times that we want to address, but not necessarily make a change to the plan. So the first point is, if you look at goal number 1 regarding creating a communication system for athletic team tryouts is equitable. Some of the parents brought up the fact that the academic counselors and the PE teachers, if they're included in the communication around tryouts, may encourage students with different abilities to go out for teams. And we certainly want to make sure that they are encouraging folks to go out and try out for teams. So we would ask to amend goal number 1 to include those folks as participants. And I don't think the copy that you guys have has these changes, so I'm referring to A. It looks like A and B are redundant for goal number 1. B would include the academic counselors and the PE teachers. For goal number 2, there was some concern with parents that by developing a rubric, we could unintentionally be coming up with a way to exclude students from sports activities, and that's certainly not our goal here. So we wanted to clarify that the goal there is to one, create some consistency between the sites on how we have tryouts, and 2, to make sure that there's kind of a base understanding for how students could safely participate in those sports. So the only change to that would be adding the word safely between participate and on in the objective for goal number 2. And lastly, there was a theme that came up several times with some parents regarding the GPA requirement and how that could be a barrier for students with disabilities in terms of their participation in athletic teams. The stance of the district on that issue, though, is that if a student with an IEP or a 504 plan is failing classes, their IEP team or their 504 team should be convening anyway to address why the student is failing, to make any changes to the IEP that are necessary, and we certainly wouldn't want to lower an expectation for the academic requirement for students just solely based on a category like a disability. So with that, are there any questions from you all or comments on the plan?
Board members. Ms. Limon?
I'll just say that I appreciate the discussion around some of this. I know that when it came forward to us, it was coming from forward based on really the state's recommendation, but I think it's been taken a step above by allowing and incorporating the feedback. So I also do hope to hear more how it actually, once it rolls out, how it's going. I mean, how this works out, I'm guessing that it will, there will be a door open for modifications if once it's rolled out, there's something that's like, oh wow, we missed that, didn't we? So, I mean, that happens, right? So, yeah, thank you for allowing the discussion. I love the school spirit, by the way. I had to point that out. Way to
close those guys.
We're still waiting for our district office
There you
T-shirt.
go.
So.
Way to represent the school site, so thanks.
Other board members? Dr. Paz.
I want to embarrass Abe for 1 minute because he was actually my soccer coach when I was in elementary school. So I want to take the moment to say that. And here I am. And so I also want to echo Monique's comments as well, as how much I'm happy to see all three of you be here and be part of the process and get that involved. And it just shows how great we have, how great our school district is.
Mr. Herron?
I'd just like to thank you for taking it to the Parent Advisory Council and also the special trainings. I mean, that's a group of supporters that we have, and their input is valuable, and I'm happy that you spent the time to do that.
Thank you.
Can I ask, it is an action plan for the 13-14 school year. So is it in place now? And have you seen any changes or any difference in terms of student participation?
Yeah, it's probably best to let the athletic director speak to how it's being implemented, but I can say that we had already kind of begun on the communication piece, some changes back in the springtime before we brought the plan to you guys, so I'll let them address how it's gone so far.
Okay, great. Don't rush to the podium.
Actually, we have implemented it. We've gotten the communication out to the special ed teachers, the junior high special ed teachers, and our PE programs too. And so I really honestly haven't seen the changes in numbers or people coming up with asking for accommodations for students so far, but we have rolled it out.
I imagine that it might pick up, I mean, by the time it was implemented, it was probably too late in a lot of cases for tryouts. And
well, in some cases, we got it out last spring, actually, to the junior highs. We did get it out last spring, and so I'm sure there will be some, yes.
All right. Any other?
Yeah, I was going to say that we are still, it's a process we're still in. Like, we're still gathering the rubrics, so all programs that we offer at our schools are on the same page with what we expect a student that's going to participate in that sport. The basic, I guess, necessities of what they need is consistent throughout the district. So that's still in process. We're working with our staffs to all get on the same page. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, and I think the other part is we're educating our coaches. We're going through some trials right now, so I'm meeting with my coaches. Okay, if there's any students that have some needs that we need to accommodate them, let me know, and then I'll be working with these gentlemen as well, how we're going to accommodate the needs to have these students for every student to have an opportunity to participate in athletics. So that's where we are, so at least at Dos Pueblos. So.
Great. And I don't know if Santa Barbara High wants to chime in.
I'm always excited to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoweth.
Actually, we do have two students that we've already worked with, two families that, with our special education team and our coaches, we've tried to, again, we're trying to get all on the same page with what the specifications are to make a team. But with that said, every case we want to be very concerned with to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And again, we speak to these gentlemen behind me that they're the experts to make sure that we're doing the correct thing. But having a brother with special needs, I could echo, I think, what Dan and Dave have said is we want to have every child, regardless of ability or not, to have the best high school experience they can. If that is being on the team or being a team manager or somehow affiliated through the marketing side of it with kids, we're going to try to make that happen.
I think given that you've had an Olympic athlete graduate who had special needs, I think that it just goes to show that it takes all kinds to do that well.
And I think that brings up a good point. It's not as if we haven't had students with disabilities participating on our teams for years, and as long as I've been working in the district office, I'm aware of several cases every year, different abilities, students participating on different sports teams. We may not have had a formal plan for how we deal with accommodation requests, but we've been serving students well, and I've been very impressed by the athletic directors just welcoming and being open to any kind of ideas on this topic. So it's been great to work with them.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, thank you very much, and we look forward to further updates on that.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, now we get to move to the very cheerful H2, discussion of Alliant Employee Benefits Health and Wellness Consulting Services proposal.
Boy, I hope it's cheerful.
I hope it's cheerful, too. I would love good news.
Wow, what an introduction.
We have the ever cheerful
Whenever I
name
hear about
Health benefits, I'm always, yeah.
No, this is good news. This is good. We think it's good news. It's a good direction. As you all know that, as you all know that health care costs have increased dramatically over the last few decades and have resulted in a current political revaluation of our country's health care system, its funding, and its performance. For these reasons, Santa Barbara felt that they needed to move in a different direction or get help moving into a different direction to find the best solution for our employees, for ourselves and our employees. We sent out a request for proposal to, it was an open request, and we got 4 insurance brokers, consultants that responded to the request for proposal, and we developed a team to review the requests and the RFPs and to interview them, and it was composed of HR, fiscal, and the unions, both sides of the unions. It was unanimous in all aspects that Alliant was our #1 choice. And Alliant is the 12th largest broker in the United States and has experience with schools and is extremely familiar with the Santa Barbara situation. They're at the county here, in the Santa Barbara County, and they've been with them for 20+ years, I believe. So we are hoping that, well, we know that they will lead us into some sort of strategic plan about where we're going to go as far as our insurance. Are we going to stay with CISC? Are we going to go self-insured? Are we going to go somewhere in between? If we stay with CISC, or if we go out and look for a new insurance company to help us along with our needs for our insurance, plus guide us through the Affordable Care Act. So that's what we are expecting from them, and that's what we hope they give us. One thing that they seem to have such a wealth of resources to help educate our employees and educate us through this process. And that's basically it. And if you have any questions, I'm sure you do.
All right, board members? Ms. Dimon?
I don't know that I have a lot of questions, but I'm actually really thankful that this is coming forward. I think we owe it to our employees. The insurance and health benefits have been going up like they have with other public and private entities. I'm excited to see if they bring something forward, but I also understand that there will continue to be challenges that we have no control over. And I think the area, as you've stated, is one of the challenges that we've had no control. And I'm recently reminded that the UC system brought their new president, Napolitano, and who met with the chancellor and one of our healthcare systems and was still not able to negotiate. So it's hard. So I'm glad that we're trying something different that we haven't tried, because I think that really, again, we owe this to our employees who have been absorbing pretty high cost of health insurance and benefits. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Surely. Mr. Herron?
Can you just in a nutshell tell us what they'll be doing for, what is it, $96,000 a year?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that all 4 of them were roughly in the same area. Not one was really out of whack from the other. Basically, what we're expecting them to do, their scope of work, and this is just on the top of the surface, is to research to see if we really should be in the CISC pool, or should we go self-insured, which brings a whole nother, of its own issues, or stay halfway in between, and we can do that in CISC. Because right now, when you're in CISC, you cannot even view your own data, so we don't know what's going on with our employees. Do we have a high amount of employees that have diabetes? If we knew that, we could educate them more on being a diabetic or potentially being a diabetic or keep diabetes down. That doesn't mean we'll know people's names or anything. We'll just know 100 of our staff are diabetic. We want to get into a wellness program, and that falls right into it. Try to get people healthy so that we may not be able to help some people who have already gone in and been a diabetic, but maybe we have some people that are on the borderline that we can help them and educate them. So the wellness program is going to be a big part of keeping our employees healthy to keep our costs down. So the more people we have sick, the higher our premiums, the higher our experience rate, the higher our percentage goes up each year. We won't, right now, so we don't see our data. If we're self-insured, we would see our data, and if we're semi-self-insured in CISC, we could see our data also. So that would give us more information. So let's see. I have the
And why won't CISC give us the data?
They just don't do that. That's just not part of, we've asked them, and I don't know exactly what their excuse is, or but they do not allow us to see our data. So when we go up $2 million, we don't know why that went up $2 million.
I've asked that question 3 years in a row, in writing and over the phone.
It's just not their policy. But if we go somewhere in between, which like Santa Maria Bonita is, they're in the CISC pool, but they're not. It's kind of like the bucket, the pool, the bucket, and the teacup type thing. They're in the pool, and they get to see their data because they're semi-self-insured. So they will do a lot of reporting. They will help us guide if we decide to get out of CISC but stay with a separate insurance company. They'll help us broker for the insurance companies and go out and research the best plan. Employee service, the wellness program. They will help us with our, teaching or keeping our unions informed, keep us legislative compliant, keep us in with the health care and all the Affordable Care Act, which is in itself a massive job to keep up with that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on this? It's just, it's something that has been incredibly frustrating all my years on the board, and I know for all of you in the years in the district, as you've watched and seen what's happened to your own paychecks. I feel like we tried a lot of different routes, and you just get hammered again. I do appreciate, like Ms. Limon, trying a different route. I think that makes sense, and so I hope that this will come forward for action. And I guess my question is, will it come forward on action on the consent agenda, or is this another one that needs to be approved on the action agenda?
We'd like it on the consent agenda.
Any objections? All right, we will see that on the next consent agenda.
And that will be with the contract, so that's okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
That
was good news.
Next up is item H3. This is the Common Core State Standard Mathematics Pathway and Transition discussion. And this is largely about our junior high schools and some math, some high school.
Yeah, we think it's a 7-12 issue.
Yep.
All right, and we'll have the presentation first, and then we will take public comment on that.
Thanks again. And again, I just want to acknowledge we've got a group of math teachers in the room, and I also want to acknowledge some parents that Janet and I have met talking about the different ideas about mathematics as we transition to Common Core. So it's good to have folks in the audience. One of the things we want to talk to you about today during this part of the discussion is the differences between Common Core mathematics and mathematics that we've been doing up to this point based off of the 97 standards. I know during our math board workshop that we've talked a lot about the differences. But I think it's important to start this conversation, again, highlighting those differences. And so one of the things, just to orient all of us, is that Common Core math, unlike the 97 mathematics standards in California, really are based off of two sets of standards. There's Common Core standards of math content. That's the what of mathematics. And then the 8 standards of math practice in Common Core, the doing of mathematics, what kids are going to do K through 12 to engage in that what of mathematics. And comparison to the 97 standards, 97 math standards really were just focused on the content, very little on practices. They refer to them as reasoning standards, and they were almost there just as a list of things, nothing much more than that. And so Common Core, unlike our 97 standards, focuses on these 3 instructional shifts of focus, coherence, which I referred to earlier with our discussion of integrated, and then rigor. And Common Core has a very clear definition of what they're going off of, this notion of rigor. And it's good to put this out there. It's in the California framework that was adopted by the State Board of Education in November. And it is that rigor is defined with 3 aspects, 3 components: conceptual understanding, procedural fluency and skill, and application. And that is a huge difference to what might have been seen as rigor in the 97 standards. 97 math standards really had a strong focus on procedural skill and fluency, less emphasis on the other 2 components defined as rigor in Common Core. So I just want to put that out there as part of our starting point. Another big difference between Common Core mathematics and the 97 standards for mathematics is we can look at the actual content, so get a little more specific. So the differences between Common Core math and the 97 math, and I'm going to show you a visual that I showed to you back in December at the board workshop. This notion that traditional math, the content of Common Core is at a much deeper level and more rigorous level in terms of content compared to our 97 standards. So I'm going to show you this slide that you saw back in December. And Common Core, regardless of traditional or integrated sequences, is not, we can't think of Common Core mathematics as the same as our 97 experience, which is hard for us to accept because that's our experience, that's all that we know. Unless you spend a lot of time looking at Common Core mathematics, as Janet and I have been hired to do. And so I want to highlight Common Core Math 8 in particular. So Common Core Math 8. Math 8 is a new course for the state of California. It is a course, so the 97 standards went from grades kindergarten through 7th grade, and then jumped to Algebra 1. And so the expectation was all 8th graders would do an Algebra 1 course. Common Core, and that was specific to California, Common Core has gone off of a tremendous amount of decades of research showing that a very strong foundation in K-8 mathematics is what prepares students to be successful in higher level math, including to get them ready for college level mathematics. And so Common Core has this Math 8 course. When you compare Math 8 in Common Core to the experience in the 97 standards, again, there is no Math 8 course in the 97 standards. But looking at the content of the Common Core Math 8, it includes algebra ideas. It includes 97 high school geometry coursework. It includes the first half of our 97 Algebra 1. And this isn't just me putting this up here as something I've learned. This is coming from UCLA's Department of Mathematics when they did the analysis of Common Core mathematics compared to the 97 standards. We've talked about the higher level mathematics differences in content, but I'm particularly focusing on Math 8 for this. I want to show you also in that California Math Framework, if you go to Appendix A of the California Math Framework, they talk about the differences in grade 8 mathematics, the increased rigor. So I'm highlighting that line 3, the bold heading increased rigor of grade 8 and of Algebra 1 or Math 1 in Common Core. And the specific things that I want to tell you about is the mathematics in grade 8 is, again, not just about algebra. It is the 5 domains of mathematics that Common Core is based off of. And so it's an experience that is providing the foundation for kids to be successful in an Algebra 1 higher level course, geometry or Algebra 2, or in our case, Math 1, Math 2, Math 3. And so the type of content we're talking about, I'm going to slide down to this heading here, line 111. The California Common Core grade 8 standards are significantly higher in rigor than the Algebra 1 course that many students have taken while in 8th grade. So they're talking about that 97 algebra. And so some of the specific content is on that next set of lines here. I'm going to read this for you. The California Common Core Math for grade 8 addresses the foundations of algebra, including content that was previously part of an Algebra 1 course, such as more depth in linear relationships and equations, more formal treatment of functions, exploration of irrational numbers. I want to get to something more specific. This is line 118. California Common Core Math 8, or grade 8, also includes geometry standards that relate graphing to algebra in a way that was not previously explored. In addition, the statistics presented in California Common Core Math grade 8 are more sophisticated than those previously included in middle school and connect to linear relationships with representation of bivariate data. We're talking about a very rigorous course that never existed to prepare kids to be successful in higher level mathematics, including college level mathematics, statistics, which is what Ms. Lamone was really excited to see, and college level calculus. And so it's important for us to not think of Common Core Math 8 as just an extra pre-algebra course. It is a foundational course to provide experience in all the domains of math, to prepare kids for higher level math. And then line 124, talking about the new Algebra 1 or Math 1 course that is built upon the work of grade 8 in Common Core and are correspondingly more advanced than the previous courses from 1997. And so I want to highlight, I'm going to read that sentence there, because many of the topics previously included in the former Algebra 1 course are in the California grade 8. The new Algebra 1 or Math 1 courses typically start in grade 9. With more advanced topics include more in-depth work with linear functions, exponential functions, which is traditionally taught in second-year algebra from the 97 standards, and go beyond the previous high school standards in statistics, which is definitely the case. So Math 1 builds directly on the continuation of grade 8, of Common Core grade 8, and provides a seamless transition to content through an integrated curriculum. That grade 8 course and that Math 8 course is extremely important. Finally, I want to read 143. Recalibrating the course placement process will require school district personnel, including teachers, counselors, instructional specialists, to rethink the information they need for assigning students to courses, particularly in middle school mathematics, where many variations may currently exist in the sequence from grade 6 to grade 8. During the next several years, as implementation of Common Core mathematics strengthens, so too will steps need to be taken at the school district and site level to ensure that the sequence of courses is guiding students to Common Core mastery by the end of grade 8. So they're giving us the sense that this is very different than what California has experienced from the 97 standards. And just to highlight some more differences, and I shared a lot of this with you during the board meeting in December, the Smarter Balance assessments, what students are going to be expected to demonstrate to schools and to our district is a huge difference. The types of questions that Algebra 1 CST assess students on only multiple choice. This is an Algebra 1 question. This is something that students can solve. The expectation is they would read the question, create an algebraic kind of expression, and come up with an answer. But certainly nothing stops anyone from choosing one of those answers and working backwards, which doesn't assess your algebraic skills necessarily. Whereas with Common Core, I'm going to highlight two aspects. This points out some of the differences between Smarter Balance. This is what might be considered an equivalent type of question to that last one, because this is what students will experience on what's called their computer adaptive portion, what is more closely connected to what kids would be comparable to what they did in the CST approach, where kids are sitting down, working out problems that are relatively short. You'll see this is a similar type of algebra problem where kids cannot just guess an answer or work backwards. This is something where students need to respond with mathematics and explain their thinking, again, getting at content and the practices. But I also want to highlight an aspect of Smarter Balance that our students have never been asked to do, is the performance tasks that are within Smarter Balanced. This is a grade 8 task. There's some front-loaded stuff at the beginning that explains this problem, but this is a geometry problem that addresses those practices, but also connects to ratio and proportion, so an algebra idea, and statistics and probability. So already right here, you have a performance task that is an integrated approach to mathematics, and I'm going to show you the task itself. This is what students would see and do as part of a end-of-year grade 8 experience. And it's not to show you necessarily the content challenge, it's just the complexity of this task. You might even notice that this is something where teachers are involved in helping in asking questions. It's a kind of assessment experience that students have not experienced in the state of California. So session 1 of this task is asking kids to do basically a problem-based task. You are as I'm reading that last sentence there, as one of the finance committee members, you must make a recommendation that best meets the needs of the town at this time for 2 different options, using mathematics to justify your recommendation. And it offers these questions for the students to address in their recommendation. These are all mathematically based questions. And so talking about application, going back to that definition of rigor, conceptual understanding, procedure and skill fluency, and application. You can see it in a task like this. That was session 1. Session 2 is a follow-up part of this task. So now you have to answer these questions in a report that you would be submitting. And so the level of difficulty and expectation is much higher. And so when we think about the math framework and what they're saying to us is the increased rigor and expectation, this is the level that we're talking about. So when we're making
Let's interrupt you just for a moment, Mr. Harris.
How do you answer those questions on a computer?
So thank you for asking that. That's why I wanted to show you these 2 sets of questions. The first set is this one here. This is that computer adaptive, much shorter, much smaller. This is something that students would answer on a computer, because this is something you can provide a short response. What is a cost? How many pages? That other one is considered a performance task. It is not going to be done on a computer. That is a second component of Smarter Balance. Students will do that on paper and turn that in, and that will get hand graded by folks from Smarter Balance California. So it's 2 separate aspects, Smarter Balance.
All right, go ahead.
So thank you for helping me check through the differences of 97 mathematics, or mathematics based off of 97 standards, and the assessments that go with those compared to where we are headed starting this year, or officially next year. So I want to highlight, as our teachers have come to learn about this increased rigor and the differences in these courses, we have been, sorry, I want to find this last piece right here. We have spent some time as teachers looking at, and I'm going to pull this slide up, looking at the pathways of secondary mathematics so that we can design a set of learning experiences that best support kids to be successful, to be college and career ready, to engage in the content that we have all come to learn is different and more rigorous than the content we are used to. And thinking through how we design these courses from grades 7 through 12 to allow kids to see the connection of mathematics, to be college and career ready for all kids, and to excel kids who are going to become our quantitative folks in colleges and universities, to provide a pathway for them. And this is what we originally showed to you in December at the board workshop as some possible pathways for all students. So let me step back a moment. Walking people through this diagram, this top sort of rainbow pathway is the Common Core pathway. Math 7, Math 8, Math 1, 2, and 3, with a fourth year set of options in their 12th grade year. The California framework talks about what can districts choose to do for students who may be able to demonstrate through the rigors, demonstrate that they have the conceptual understanding, the procedural fluency, and the ability to apply that knowledge to move through that Common Core pathway in a more accelerated rate. And we talked at the board workshop that this is true acceleration. It is not how we have done mathematics in our district previously, or based off of the 97 standards. It is true acceleration, where the framework offers opportunities for kids to compact those standards. A big difference that I need to make sure people realize is that every grade level K-8 is assessed through Smarter Balance on the same set of standards. There's no more end of course assessments like you were able to have in CST. And so we have all 7th graders being assessed on the same set of standards based off of those 5 domains of content. Same thing with grade 8, a separate set of standards, but all 8th graders are assessed on the same set of standards. And then again, for 11th grade, it's the same set of standards. So we have offered a way for folks who can demonstrate that they're ready to accelerate through Common Core, the standard Common Core pathway. And that's this middle option here, is to compact courses at the high school level. One reason why the framework offers that as a suggestion is because there are these plus standards. These plus standards are standards beyond the Common Core, but are important mathematical standards for any student who is going to, or feels like they want to prepare themselves for a quantitative STEM major at the university. It is standards that they need to have in order to demonstrate that they're ready for that STEM experience. And so compacting or enhancing Math 2 and Math 3 with these plus standards, adding more standards for students to cover in those 2 courses in grades 10 and 11 will prepare kids and get them ready for college level calculus in grade 12. And then what we have done at the junior high, grades 7 through basically grade 7 and 8, and also 9 as well, is offer an enhanced experience. This is something that we locally have determined is a way to allow kids to prepare for that compacted high school pathway, providing a depth and enrichment experience in grades 7 and 8 to keep the spark alive for students who are excited about mathematics, get them to keep that spark going, provide a depth so that they have a strong foundation in grades 7, 8, and 9 to be successful for a rigorous, compacted, accelerated pathway to prepare them for college-level mathematics, to engage in those plus standards. That's this middle pathway. The bottom pathway is a double acceleration. It is taking what the California framework has offered as two possible options of compacting junior high and high school, and we are thinking about an option of putting both of those in a pathway to allow kids to compact twice, to do a year and a half of coursework for 4 straight years to get them to be college and career ready and take a college level course in 11th grade. The challenge of that, and this is where our teachers' input is important, they realized when you have the acceleration, you lose out on the depth that the plus courses or the enhanced courses in 7th and 8th grade would offer. And so I want to show, now that that visual is up there, that is the same visual that our teachers looked at. And so here is, after spending some time in their departments, they have come up with these are 4 themes that, when I looked at the data, 4 themes that came out of the data. First one, that targeted support is needed for students to meet the rigors of Common Core mathematics. The depth in grades 6 through 8 is important, not speed, because the foundation in grades 6, 7, and 8 is important for that success in higher level mathematics. Compaction in high school is an option for students that are preparing for a quantitative major or a STEM major, but we have to think carefully about that compaction because that's something we're not used to doing in high school with that pre-calculus course, compacting it in the 2 upper levels of higher level of high school mathematics. And of course, the placement considerations in advanced classes. We need to strongly think through that process. And so here are the pros and cons that our teachers came up with for that middle pathway. I think this middle pathway offers, and I'm going to put that pathway back up. This middle pathway offers, besides, as I said, the stronger foundation, it offers lots of on-ramps and off-ramps for students to join this pathway when they can demonstrate that they are ready for it, and for students to get off this pathway when they have determined they're not ready for that. The other advantage of this that our teachers said is that the decision to accelerate in high school when students are more academically mature, that they know where they're headed outside of K-12, so post-secondary, might make more sense than making that decision on this bottom pathway in 6th or 7th grade. And at this point, I want to share, based off of this decision, or sorry, this discussion and offering the pros and cons, this is a pathway diagram that our teachers, from the data that they suggested, or that they offered, that we are now offering to you as another way to look at these pathways, that we would have that support pathway at the top, a Common Core pathway, and then that middle pathway is spelled out there from our old diagram. It's now here. That provides enrichment and depth for that foundation in middle school and junior high, and compaction at the high school to prepare kids for additional coursework. Something that I think is important to highlight is that UCs, CSUs have all stated that 4 years of math is necessary. It's what allows all kids to be successful in baccalaureate work, not just work in mathematics, but in any college level work. And satisfying the 4-year requirement by the time you're in 10th grade, or the 4-year suggestion, is not really what UCs are saying. They're saying they want a math experience grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. So anyone that satisfies the 3-year minimum A through G and the 4-year recommended it's really 4 years across all 4 grades of high school that we want to make sure students are doing. Is there any additional ideas you want to bring in?
I think the piece when I talk to teachers, 6th grade teachers and 7th grade teachers, is that we really need to come together and talk about what the entrance requirements are for this bottom pathway. It's not something that we can use, the algebra readiness test or the Cal Poly test. It's not something that we can just take a test and say, these kids are ready. It has to be something that we build together. 6th grade teachers have to understand what we're talking about. 7th grade teachers need to understand what we're talking about. And together we have to build a common understanding. We all know that Common Core 7, 8, Math 1 is going to be really challenging, and so we need to define what it is for students that are going to need something more than Common Core. Common Core is rigorous and tough. So how are we going to identify students that are going to need something that is beyond the demands of Common Core? And that is something that we have to come together, build a common understanding, because it's not one group telling another group what is happening. It is, how are we meeting the needs of kids? And from both the support at the top, we need to know what students need support and how we're going to support them, and we need to know who it is that we need to allow those options for enrichment and to just thrive in the world of math. And so only through conversations with bringing 6th grade teachers and 7th grade teachers together are we going to be able to really identify kids and support kids in the way that they need, and not just 6th grade teachers from Santa Barbara, but we need to be engaging Goleta through Montecito, including Hope, Cold Springs, and so that across this Santa Barbara area, we have a team effort in trying to meet the needs of kids that need support and also meet the needs of kids that need enrichment. And it is something that we need to build. It doesn't exist now. And so one of the things that Craig and I have been doing is reaching out to the TOSAs or math leaders in Montecito, Cold Springs, Goleta, and Hope. And so we understand that trying to figure out what the criteria is, and we talked long and hard about putting that honors down at the bottom, because this is a curricular difference. What it is, what is it that we're going to do differently? What is it we're going to ask students in this? What is the enrichment going to be? And that's something that teachers have to define. And so it's easy to put pathways up. It's hard to figure out what's the support that students need, what's the enrichment that students need, and how are we going to get that information, because we're moving between not only schools like elementary schools and junior highs, we're moving between systems of Goleta, Hope, Cold Springs, and Montecito. And so this is a lot. I mean, it's easy to put up. It's a lot of work to do, and that's the work that once we figure out which direction we're going, that's the work that has to occur. And so it's a pretty picture, it's a lot of work.
All right, let's go ahead and take public comment on this, and then we will have board discussion.
We have one public comment that I have. Barbara Scharf. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Barbara Scharf from PEPS, and I wanted to thank Dr. Drotti and Janet and Craig for meeting with us the other day. And actually, you've answered a lot of my questions, so a lot of these things I have to say, you've set things very clear, so thank you so much for all the hard work that you've done. It's my understanding now that you have 3 pathways, and but it's not clear to me still where the separation for the Common Core Plus class will be, and as you said, you're not sure of that either. It's difficult to meet all the students' needs using differentiated math instruction at the junior high, and if you did follow the current district honors cutoff for the plus math class, this would represent a really broad range of abilities and make it more difficult for the classroom teacher to meet the needs of the advanced students. Ideally, advanced students should not be scheduled into a larger ability range of students. Common Core is designed to meet the needs of students at grade level, and the California standard set is not designed to meet the needs of the gifted. Talented math students at the high school have the option to accelerate, but now you say that you're going to offer enrichment at the junior high, so that's really wonderful. We were thinking, why not offer a Common Core Plus Plus for the gifted math students that covers Common Core and keeps students engaged and still on the pathway to calculus in 12th grade. And also, next year's Smart Balance test, we can see the results of this extra class, which is now probably the enhanced classes I see. The Common Core Plus class, such as that, or what you decide to call it, is especially important for girls. Students have shown that junior high age girls are at risk of turning off to math, and I have 2 daughters. Girls need a safe and nurturing environment where they can excel in math without social issues they often face in the classroom, where students may not share that same love of math. In this class, girls can be proud to be math nerds. A class such as this would not cost the district extra money, and there are enough students for this class. It's all a matter of how you divide the groups, which you just discussed, so that's wonderful. Our goal is to have all students to be challenged. We appreciate that we can still be part of the discussion as you're trying to decide how to go forward with this. We are going slow and strong. We want to keep the kids engaged. And we just want to make sure, because the Common Core is, they stated it was at grade level, that the other children, the highest level kids, are engaged and continue to love math, because I don't want my daughter to turn off to math. And you know, even if they don't go into STEM, I think that a lot of kids want to have a goal to go to calculus just for the sake of doing math. Math for math's sake, no matter what they do in life, is really important because it can help everybody. And my only other question I had is, when I was looking at the charts, there was a pathway where you can do a little more acceleration at the junior high and then do pre-calculus in your junior year and calculus in the senior year without that acceleration. And was that an option that you were thinking of doing? I wasn't sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Shar.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, board members, Mr. Herron.
I just, on that one chart with the word honors, because my immediate thought is that, what's the definition of it? Because if it's our current understanding of honors, that in itself poses problems. And I just wonder if you gave any thought to another word.
Yes.
So-
Go ahead and speak to that while I get that.
I'm going to say that we're going back and forth as to whether we were even going to put the word honors on the diagram. In high school, there's really specific criteria for honors courses that we could look at what the high school courses are and how we make those honors courses, because there are some benefits of being in an honors course in a high school, and so we need to define what that is. But we really want to make sure that the differences are curricular differences, that if a student is in one class, if a student is in the Common Core class, there's something additional that the enhanced class has. It's not just the way that we've separated students. There's actually more things that you do.
And the UCs in their A through G Area C, which is the mathematics area, in their course approval process talks about honors and how UCs will give honors credit for particular courses depending on the criteria that you put into that course. And it is only at the higher end of mathematics where students would get that extra honors credit. So Mr. Herron's point about maybe the name of, or adding that label honors when it doesn't tie directly to UC's definition of honors, it's a good point, and we may need to think about that.
Other board members? Ms. Limon?
I have a general question. In the model we have now, and I suspect in the model we will have in a short time, there have always been students who have not necessarily fit any pathway we've created. What happens to those students? I think in your numbers at the last meeting, it was a small number of students per high school that go beyond calculus. But what options do those students who, if they took the plus whatever model pathway, what happens?
So their options are they are what's here, if this was what it was. Now, how students choose with parent input, counselor input, we are advising folks that if they come to us saying, hey, we can go ahead and do something that is not here, as not laid out as an official pathway. That is something I think that the parents, the students, and the counselor and math teachers would have to decide what's best for that individual student. Having as much information about the implications of those decisions made at that stage, what it might do for them later on. So as an example, a student who goes through a pathway and skips certain courses, let's say, we have to realize by skipping content, you are possibly not allowing folks to be successful in higher level mathematics that builds off of that content. It also could be that if students, even if they aren't skipping content, but they're just accelerating and going really fast, then it means that if you do that early, there is an endpoint to what our district offers in terms of courses, and knowing that UCs and colleges of all caliber want students to have, and they put on paper 4 years, but we also can show you where they say it's 4 years through all semesters of high school, so through 12th grade. And so parents and students and counselors and everyone making this decision early on needs to understand that that's what colleges are wanting, is to go through a 12th grade math experience, and if they run out of district offered courses, then luckily we have some very nice institutions that can provide additional math content, and then it's a choice of getting to those institutions to do mathematics.
Ms. Adelson.
I think the other piece is we don't know how this is happening now. So we've done a lot of research on a lot of different things, but I don't know how students right now are getting into geometry in 7th grade, how they've fulfilled these requirements. And so to be able to really answer that question, we need to look at what the process is now for exceptional students that are doing this work, because I don't know. And so I'm not sure why when we move to Common Core it would be any different than it is now, but I don't know.
All right, so it sounds like this has happened. We have a system in place to deal with this that involves consultation with the counselor and the parents. And so should we find 3 years into this or 1 year into it, or that this is something that's going to be needed for his child, we have a practice that we can replicate.
I believe so, and I want to also remind us that Smarter Balance is going to have more impact on individual students and parents and family units, more so than CST ever did. And so both the fact that you don't take end of course assessments, so if you are skipping 7th grade Common Core content, but you're a 7th grader, you will still be assessed on those 7th grade standards that you may have skipped past or done earlier. And the reason why that's important is, here's how the difference with CST happens. Students are going to be receiving information that says how you are progressing towards college and career readiness. With an 11th grade assessment that will actually have impact on individual kids being able to demonstrate to a college, I am ready for college level mathematics. Through my assessment in 11th grade, they're going to be able to carry that with them to whatever university they get accepted to, whether it's in the state of California or in any of the other 45 states that have adopted Common Core. They'll be able to say to that university, I am ready, assuming that university has modified their placement, which all universities are looking at Common Core to say, how are we adapting our programs for impact on Common Core? That student who is a senior can now say, I am ready for universities in all these other states, math courses at their university. And so that's something that CSTs never offered kids. And so we just have to make sure that when students are taking Smarter Balance, we may not think kids are going to care about those scores, but the system is designed now for students to actually use those assessments to demonstrate to outsiders their readiness for mathematics experiences at that institution.
Okay, and another question. You described the on and off ramps, and you gave the example if someone needed to take an off ramp to something that was kind of at a slower pace. Is there an on ramp to accelerate? Or I have to be careful with the words I use, and their new meanings. To move, I mean, but is it to move in multiple directions? Like, should someone say, you know,
so
let's do something a little bit, yeah.
What is in this diagram is that from grade 7 to grade 8, from grade 8 to grade 9, students can, in whichever pathway they're in, could move to a different pathway. Off-ramps, on-ramps, as long as they can demonstrate. And this gets back to that question about placement, which right now, as Janet said, that's the piece we need to move towards. If they can demonstrate through placement requirements that they're ready for this experience, or they're ready to get off of that experience to a different one, then those on and off ramps exist throughout this diagram. In the one exception is in 10th, as soon as you start to accelerate, then the on-ramp becomes not possible. Off-ramp, yes, because, and I'm going to move over here quickly. This spot here, you can get off of this and come back to I don't want to do the plus standards, because in 11th grade, you are still continuing on in the coursework from Math 2 to Math 3. Here, if you're in this pathway, you can't jump on the on-ramp here because you missed out on these plus standards in your Math 2 experience. So when you accelerate, the on-ramps decrease when you compact. When you have enrichment and depth, the on-ramps and off-ramps, you have more opportunities for those.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Edelson.
Hi, I want to absolutely thank both Craig and Janet. I think I've learned more math in the last 2 weeks than in my whole life. But anyway, in a good, positive way. I guess there is a concern as to how the breakdown is as far as, how many are in that lower track and, where you draw those lines. But I agree that needs to work itself out with however that criteria is, placement is made. I want to emphasize, because two of my own children, have gone on to a 12th year and have taken the City College upper second year calculus, very strenuous program, but I see a real advantage to our system because that's considered dual enrollment. So we are able to educate our students in this community with that option. So it's not really, it's part of, then it flows onto their transcript at our high school. So I think emphasizing that we take them to 11th grade with the pre-algebra and then they can make a choice for that 12th year is critical, but that's the message. It's not, if they're a very highly accelerated, capable student, that, we don't keep challenging you. No, there's an option there, and it's a good one.
Yes, and I'm talking about courses beyond that dual enrollment experience.
Right.
So we have dual enrollment calculus and statistics and another math class that we're talking about for the students that are going beyond what our district can offer through
I'm
dual
even
enrollment.
saying the 200, 210, and 220
Right.
you can end up that also.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm very pleased with what you've shown, and I think, it's a really great.
So I'd like to say one thing about talking about this enrichment and trying to figure out how that works. I think I personally am less concerned about that because I really do think it's going to work itself out because Common Core is going to be very challenging, and there's going. I need to sort of plant a seed when you look at that top piece of support. We're going to have large numbers of students that need support, and so this interest in how we're going to support kids, instead of trying to increase the number of students in this bottom enriched part. I would like to see us as a district start to track how many students need support and watch that number shrink. And so that our goal is to take the large number of students that need support, and traditionally we've said, oh, you haven't done well, we're going to push you to a lower class. Oh, you haven't done well, we're going to push you to a lower class. Well, we need to look at, oh, we have 100 kids in 7th grade that need support. Now in 8th grade, look, we're doing better, we only have 80 kids. Students are always going to need support, but the part that I need to plant the seed is that support piece is something that we're going to have to really attend to, and looking at how we develop a system that we have fewer kids that need support. I think the bottom part, 6th and 7th grade teachers can come together to a common understanding of what that means. How we're going to get kids back on track is sort of the next place that we're going.
Well, I'll chime in with, this will affect some of our current 7th, 8th, maybe 9th graders next year. It will affect all of our incoming 7th graders, and so that's about 1,500 students. And I appreciate that this diagram has the Math 7 plus support piece on it, sort of officially, even if it's not defined exactly what that looks like, because a third of them are likely to need plus support. They're not going to be at grade level. And so that's a large number of kids. There's going to be costs associated with double periods, after school tutoring, summer sessions. How are we going to make that work for students, especially as we see how they react to the new curriculum. Ms. Limon was talking about some of our sort of our outliers or really exceptional students. That's going to be typically fewer than 10 at the 6th grade level. Some of those students have taken Algebra 1 at City College. They can do that with special permission, and that's how they get placed, or they've done, they may have done a course through Stanford, for example. There are online courses that they could have taken that will place them in geometry, but that will accelerate. You'll get more students in that once they hit high school, because they'll have been taking the classes that Ms. Idelson's talking about at City College that are beyond the traditional dual enrollment, but the really upper level classes, and more students do that as they get older. But what I hear parents, I think, and I hope that we will always be flexible with those students. Those are students that really have very special needs, and there's absolutely no way that we would lockstep them. We'll have about 120 or so students that would normally go into Algebra 1 as 7th graders, that now we're looking at this Math 7 versus Math 7 Plus. I do really hesitate. I know that honors needs to go straight on to the high school pathway for UC transcript reasons, but I hesitate to have that on there for 7th and 8th grade, because it could be that Math 7 Plus enrichment, it may be for maybe those 30 students at each school and maybe a few more, but not much more. And it may not be, I don't want parents that think of their students as honors level in other ways to necessarily think that's going to be an auto entry into that class, because we don't know what that looks like yet. And so, and you guys haven't talked about what placement into that would look like. And so I think that right now it would be better if 7th and 8th grade didn't have honors attached to it until on the Math 7 Plus enrichment and the Math 8 Plus enrichment, until that's a little clearer. What else? On the upper level, one thing that surprised me a little bit is, right now our high-level students will take Calc AB as 11th graders and Calc BC as 12th graders, and you talked about how that's not what happens at the college level. That they typically Calc BC, each of those is a one semester course, and Calc BC actually includes all of the standards from Calc AB. I just want to check in. So our high school Calc teachers they're fine with that jump right into Calc BC. They're okay. They think that what's going on in the integrated math courses will prepare them for going right into Calc BC as seniors.
Well, you said, are they fine with the integrated program?
Well, in terms of preparing them for going straight into Calc BC.
Right. I'm not sure if it's its fit is due to integrated versus traditional. I don't think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the pathway to calculus. And so here, in that 12th grade year, students can take Calc AB, AP Calc AB, and get college level credit. It would be one semester's worth if they pass that assessment. If students are ready for a Calc BC experience to get a full year of college level calculus, there is, that would be an option too. This is again designed, the PLUS standards are designed to prepare students to be college ready for a Calculus BC experience. And AP College Board is looking at their own coursework as well under the idea of Common Core pathways, getting kids ready for this. So they are also looking at this experience, just like colleges are.
I'd like to be sure that our calc teachers are looking at this in terms of, well, because right now they really discourage kids from going straight into BC. And so will they be seeing changes in what the kids are learning that they could encourage kids to go into BC? And that's something, they have some time. That's not something that they're going to hit for a while, but I hope that that's something that's being reflected on. I really don't want the parents of 1,500 students to be shocked by this change. And I feel like we have a great vocal group around this, but it's a very small group, and a lot of parents really have no clue that this is coming. And so I talked about this on the last item, but again, the junior high school open houses are starting with La Colina, and that is going to be on Thursday. And then the rest are falling within the case of a week. I don't know if it's a case of the principal standing up there with a slide saying, by the way, this is something that is under discussion right now at the school board, and if you want further information, these are links that you can go look at, or if it's a table at these open houses.
We're preparing a script for our principals.
Super. Because
we want them all to say the same thing.
Good, that's also good. But I just want to be sure.
And those two in the back need a script.
Yeah. I just want to be sure that we get the information out in every way that we possibly can, so that parents can feel like they have the opportunity to give feedback before we make some final decisions about the pathway that goes all the way down to the junior high level. And Ms. Eitelson.
Just quick, my understanding is just Santa Barbara High has AB, BC, and so that's always been interesting. Will that change, or will there be a discussion across the district being?
DP has just BC.
I thought they do 150,
they have
160.
Both. DP has both. They have dual enrollment calculus, Math 150, 160, and they offer AP Calculus BC. BC only, no AB.
Okay, and San Marcos?
San Marcos offers, at this point, only dual enrollment, Math 150, 160, no Calculus AP. And then Santa Barbara High offers only Calculus Calculus AP, both AB and BC. They do not have dual enrollment.
Oh my gosh, what a tongue twister.
Like I say, I've been studying this, so I knew what you were going to say.
Yes.
So is there a goal here to get some parity across the district, or is that a politics
Yes.
amongst the teachers?
No,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
All
I know we're looking at adding the AP part, just like what you're saying, to have the AP and the BC do both. So I know we're looking at adding that.
All right, any other questions, Mr. Herron?
I would just like to thank the PEPS group for a very detailed analysis of this, and Craig, especially to you for giving brief responses back, commenting on those comments. I think that does great in the community to have that feedback going back and forth. So I want to thank PEPS for the time and effort they put on that.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, man, you have so much work to do.
Well, Madam President, we need to move forward. As it was very important that the board decide integrated or new traditional so that we could begin drafting course descriptions. We need to have the board make a decision soon on the pathway so that we have accurate information, in particular to our component or feeder school districts about what things look like, as well as so that our TOSAs can begin working with our math teachers in designing the placement questions.
Great. So this will be on for action at our next agenda.
Yes, it will be.
Great. Ms. Edelson?
One last thing. So my understanding is to get A to G requirement submitted for these, would that happen?
We're going to go as fast as we can.
Okay.
And Ms. Limon?
No, I was just going to note that the last open house is on the 23rd, the night before our next agenda.
That's perfect.
So we should try to get feedback if there's feedback that folks want to give to us.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You guys really have been working so hard on this, and thanks for being accessible to all of us and to the community, parents. You've been fantastic. So thank you, and we will be seeing you again very soon.
Okay. Thank you.
At this point, we are at item I. We have no items to return to on the consent agenda. J, coming events. We have our next regular board meeting on the 28th. And then we have future agenda items. Any future agenda items to add right now? Mr. Herron?
Just a few things I've been thinking about, and I'm not sure where or how, but the U.S. Department of Education and the Justice Department just came out with guidance on discipline, and in it are 54 recommendations and a whole 32 pages of comments and recommendations. I'd like us at some point to have some type of conference item or workshop to make sure that our restorative justice and our other policies all mesh and that we are doing the right thing. The last thing I want is Department of Justice coming after us. And so I'd like us to really, I'd like you to tell the board what we're doing to stay out of trouble with Department of Justice and what policies and procedures we might need to change. Secondly, the LCAP, there's board obligations in that. And I'd like, again, a workshop or a conference item reviewing that for us. What are our collective obligations in that process? What's the parent involvement in LCFF? Just what do we have to be looking for to do as a group to protect this district and ourselves and do right by our students? As far as parent involvement, something I've talked about before, a basis for that is the parent survey that's underway, and I would like a report as to where we stand on that. I did search the secondary schools, and 3 of them have the parent involvement on their website. Santa Barbara High School has it very strongly on their website. 2 others have it hidden on their website, and it's hard to find. I'd just like to know how we're doing, what efforts being made, and are the parents responding to that survey. And another thing just reminded me, I noticed that our senator and assembly person are having a conference at Franklin School on the California covered health care, which I think is great. But are we as a district doing anything to help our parents do the right thing by that California, Cover California? We want healthy kids, and if they aren't having health insurance, we have some problems. So I just want, I'd like to know if the district is doing or planning on doing anything to encourage parents to look into it and do something. That's all.
Great. And Ms. Limon?
Along those lines, one of the things that I know is in our strategic plan is the idea that our schools become community schools, and it's come up in different ways. So maybe, I don't know if it's at the end of the academic year or some point where we get, as a conference agenda item, I do kind of want the public to hear what some of our schools are doing or plan on doing to kind of meet that strategic goal. I think we know of some schools, and we hear a lot about, you know, certain schools, but I would love to hear how other schools are trying to meet that objective.
Anything else? All right, well, if there is no dissension on this, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.